All right, and I'd like to take the opportunity at this time to start with some introductions. I'm Kathy Hoffman. I'm the Policy and Rules Coordinator. I'm sorry, Policy and Rules Manager for the Liquor and Cannabis Board. Really glad to be here tonight with all of you. And also want to kick it over to colleagues who have joined here today. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Audrey. And if you'd like to hand it off to the next staff, I'd appreciate it. Thanks, Audrey.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm Audrey Vasic, one of the Policy and Rules Coordinators, and I will hand it off to Beth.
Thanks, Audrey. I'm Beth Lehman. I'm the Customer Service and Support Manager in the Licensing and Regulation Division, and I will hand it off to Nicola Reed.
Thank you, Beth. Hi, my name is Nicola Reed. I am the Compliance and Adjudications Manager within the Licensing Division, and I will hand it over to Caitlin.
Hello, Caitlin Bomba. I'm the Policy and Education Manager in the Licensing Division. And Justin.
Good evening, everyone. Justin Nordhorn. I'm the Policy Director on External Affairs for Liquor and Cannabis Board. Jim.
Hi, my name is Jim Weatherly. I am our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Manager here at the LCB, and I'm still learning names, so I will hand it over to, is there Jeff?
Hi, thank you, Jim. Hi, I'm Jeff Kildall. I'm a Policy and Rules Coordinator for Cannabis with the Liquor and Control Board, and I'll hand it over to Robert.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening. I am Robert Despain. I'm also a Policy and Rules Coordinator, and my coworker here is Ava. And we will hand it over to John.
Hello, I am John Engelman. I am the Liquor Manager for the Liquor and Cannabis Board. And let's see, who else do we have here? Mary Sagawa.
Hi, sorry, a little bit of trouble getting my thing on the right, cursor in the right place. I'm Mary Sagawa. I'm the Public Health Education Liaison at the Liquor and Cannabis Board. Thank you. And is there anyone else to hand it to?
Let's see, did we introduce Linda?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Thompson, the Cannabis Manager, and let me hand it over to Becky.
Hi, good evening. I'm Becky Smith. I'm the Director of Licensing and Regulations.
So thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. And I think we have 3 participants. It looks like on the phone we have, and you reached out to us already, 678-906-1956. Would you like to introduce yourself this evening?
Hi, everybody. That's me. My name's Brittany, and I am currently a Quality Assurance Technical Lead at Green Revolution. We are a beverage and food cannabis company located in Washington.
Great, thanks for joining. And I also, April. April, would you like to unmute yourself? I think you can, and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm April Childers. I'm a compliance officer for a multi-licensed facility here in Washington State. And hi, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Nice to meet you. And then Rob, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Robin Tucker, and I am the owner of Royal Vibes Cannabis. So hello, everyone.
And let's see, I don't see any other guests in the room. So we'll just hold and see if anyone else joins. But in the meantime, again, thanks for joining. And I'm going to go ahead and start a presentation here. I'm going to drag this over to this screen. And I'm going to go off camera while I do this presentation. So excuse me here for a moment and then we'll get started.
I have a question about your presentation. Is it going to be recorded and is there going to be a copy sent out like through email or anything?
Absolutely, we're recording right now. And then we'll put the recording up on our outward facing website, send out a link. And then I'll also be able to print out, this is a presentation style called Prezi. So I'll print out the PDF version of all the slides so that you can have access to those as well, also on the outward facing website. Does that help?
Oh yeah, that sounds great. And I love Prezi. I've used that before.
Well, good. All right. So I'm glad to hear that. So we'll go ahead and, oh, you're welcome. So we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. So what we're going to talk about tonight is how you can get involved in the LCB rulemaking process. That includes rule development, a variety of different engagement opportunities that are available to you. So first, and welcome Paula Sardinas, glad to see you. Happy you're joining us tonight. So we'll start with, wait a minute if I can get this number, who we are and what we do. So you might know that LCB is a three-person board with an agency to go along with it. Pictured here are our board chair, David Postman, and you've already met board member Garrett, board member Hauge, the gentleman in the upper left-hand corner, retired at the end of this one, so he's not with us any longer. And also pictured here is our agency director, Rick Garza. Board holds regular public meetings and work sessions. The public is invited to listen into. You can come to our public board meetings and offer comment as you wish. The board doesn't make or pass laws. So that's a operation, that's something that the legislature does, and certainly the legislature is in session right now. The board isn't able to pass laws. However, the board does approve rules that implement the laws that the legislature passes. And we also implement rules that are the outcome of rule petitions. There's a variety of reasons that the board enters into rulemaking. So what do LCB staff do? And I've given a very high level view. Each division that is represented here tonight really does a whole lot more than each of these bullet points provide, but just to give you a really high level view of what the divisions at LCB do. We'll start with licensing, issue licenses and permits to quite a number of qualified cannabis, alcohol, vapor, and tobacco businesses, and also issue special occasion permits to alcohol licensees, banquet permits, and a whole host of other types of permits. Licensing does a variety of other functions as well, but wanted to keep it high level for purposes of this meeting tonight. And then our education division provides education to cannabis, alcohol, vapor, and tobacco licensed businesses, also to our local communities and local law enforcement agencies. Our enforcement and education division also does premise checks, provides technical assistance visits, offers classes, and also conducts complaint investigations, and of course a variety of other things as well. And then our policy and rules team, we develop rules based on changes in federal or state law, changes in business practices or technology that happens in the industries that we regulate, and for a variety of other reasons, including rule petitions. We also develop policy and interpretive statements. And again, we provide a variety of other services as well. Moving on to the rule development process. So we're just going to talk tonight really about the basic rule development process. There's some other ways that rules are, the word we use is promulgated, but processes that agencies can use to make rules. And those processes apply in special circumstances. So we're just going to talk today about For instance, let's say a piece of legislation passes in this current session, requires the agency to engage in rulemaking. So what do? We engage in a standard basic rule development process, and that process is spelled out in something called the Administrative Procedures Act. And I've provided what's called the statutory reference. So that's this reference right here, Chapter 3405 RCW. That's the part of Washington state law that sets out this rulemaking process, and it's divided into 3 stages. So the first stage is the pre-proposal statement of inquiry, given the statutory reference there. So that's when we open the rulemaking. Second phase is when we have an actual rule proposal, statutory reference provided there, and we call that the CR 102. And then the final stage is when we enter a rulemaking order. That means rules that the board is ready to adopt, and that will go into something called the Washington State Register. So that's where all of the regulations for all Washington State agencies are stored. Break down each of these processes. The first process, this is stage 1. This is the actual statement of inquiry. And there's a depiction here. There's a copy of what a CR 101 looks like, the pre-proposal statement of inquiry. So what this document talks about is what the agency is thinking about working on in terms of putting together rules. And this process, of course, as I've indicated, is really laid out in statute. There's timelines that we operate on and that we have to wait to pass before we can move to the next phase. Of course, the rule project has to be authorized by law. Most of the laws that we operate under tell us what kind of rulemaking authority we have. So they create guardrails around what agencies can and cannot do in terms of putting rules forward. And so it's at this start of the process that the agency begins to collaborate with stakeholders like you, with other agencies who might be interested in the rulemaking process. And this part of the process is what we recognize as an informal process, meaning that we're not into the actual rule proposal. We're very much in a developmental phase. This part of the process also includes, in that developmental phase, listen and learn sessions, various rules workshops, and other forms of inclusive stakeholder engagement that I'll talk about in a minute. It's also at this point that the agency starts putting together a variety of analysis documents. Some of those are described in the Administrative Procedures Act. And then another piece of this is what's required under what's called the Regulatory Fairness Act. That's another part of statute. It requires agencies who engage in rulemaking to prepare what's called a Small Business Economic Impact Statement if the rule is going to result in any kind of compliance cost to those who must comply with the rule. So once that phase is completed, we move into the second stage of rulemaking, and this is where the rule proposal is created. And this is called a CR 102 or proposed rulemaking. And again, the document that you would see at this phase that the board would sign off on is enclosed here on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. This CR 102 or this rule proposal states the date of the hearing. It gives information about our statutory authority to move these rules forward, tells you who you can get in contact with if you have any questions about the rule, or if you want to provide written comments. So this is something that would go on record. If you want to provide written comment, it will reference one of our rules coordinators that you can reach out to and provide written. Then another person. Okay. So the public hearing is announced, and typically the public hearing happens between 4 and 6 weeks after the CR 102 is filed. We give lots of notice on this the public hearing so that you have time to get it on your calendar and you'll be prepared to sign it. If you wish to provide written comment, if you have any questions about any part of the rule package, don't hesitate to reach out to our rules coordinators. Happy to work with you on walking through the package with you. So when the public hearing happens, we do go on what's called on the record. So Chair Postman will open the public hearing, invite people to provide comment, and then close the record. And then the agency will review all of the oral testimony that's been provided at the public hearing and the written comments as well. So we consider all of those as a result of the hearing. All right, so I'm going to move it forward to the next phase, which is stage 3, and that's where we get to the final rule adoption. So again, after the public hearing, the agency puts together all the comments we've received and we make a decision whether the proposed rule should be changed or adopted as proposed. So sometimes there are technical changes we need to make to the rule. We found a typo in the text, or there's a word that we changed that doesn't really change the substance of the rule. Sometimes there are suggestions that are made by folks in public hearing that cause us to think a little more deeply about that suggestion, and it may cause what's called a substantive change to the rule, meaning that we would need to file what's called a supplemental CR 102 and have a second public hearing on that rule. But under this circumstance, let's just say that there were no changes made. So we would bring the rulemaking order to the board, ask them if they would approve it, and if they do, we file this rulemaking order with the Office of the Code Reviser, and the rules typically become effective 31 days later. There are some instances where we might adopt a rule a little bit earlier. That's in an instance where we have some sort of statutory mandate to get rules in place by a date certain, or there's a need to make those rules effective sooner than 31 days after filing. All the comments that we receive after the CR 102 is filed, so that's the proposed rulemaking. All the comments we receive after that, and comments that we receive during the public hearing are compiled into what's called a concise explanatory statement. So if you commented on a rule proposal, you'll see your comment in its full form, in its full native form in the concise explanatory statement and the agency's response to your comment. And we'll let you know whether or not that comment resulted in any change in the rule. So in a nutshell, and very briefly, that's the rule development process. So how do you get involved in that process? Well, we're looking forward to you becoming involved in that process because your voice matters in that process. LCB engages in what's called collaborative rule development. So what does that mean, really? It means that we hold sessions for community to review draft conceptual rules with us and offer feedback and thoughts on rule language. We encourage you to help us write rules that everyone can understand because we believe that we do better when we think together. So how might you do that? Well, the first opportunity is what are called listen and learn sessions. And this is a way for us to engage with you in an organized way to review rule language, section by section. It gives everyone a chance to speak about the rule sections being reviewed, and your ideas about language options help us write better rules. So what might those rules look like? And I'm just giving an excerpt from a page of draft conceptual rule text, but the rule draft will look just like this. It'll say it's a draft, so there's no confusion that this is truly a draft. It also has text that's pretty much spaced out like this. And then the new text that we're proposing will show up in this highlighted underlined text. There might be text that's what we call struck or has strikeout in it. That means we're thinking about doing away with existing rule and replacing it with something else. So during a listen and learn session, and this is what an agenda would look like for a listen and learn session, we go through each section of rule, and I'm providing this agenda so you can see that during a session, and I'm just going to hover over this, we would look at one particular section of rule and invite you to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and if you have any suggestions for rule language. So we're not looking for legalese here. We're looking for your thoughts on how we might rephrase a section, or if you have an idea about a way a rule should be written. We're interested in hearing from you on that, so we can work with you on putting language together that makes sense to you that we can consider. So that's one opportunity to engage in rulemaking with us. The next opportunity are what are called deliberative dialogues. These bring together panels of experts to help us explore an issue. Some of you might be familiar with the deliberative dialogues that we held on cannabis plant chemistry over the summer. And then last year at this time, we hosted 3 deliberative dialogues with 3 different panels of experts. And those were expert consumers, expert processors and producers, and experts cannabis laboratory owners. Anyway, brought everybody together to help us explore issues. Again, these provide us with a way to think together, helps the agency understand what's most important to you, and it really helps the agency consider what we might need to put into law in the future when we're working with the legislature, what we can put into rule currently, and perhaps help us set policy. So how does deliberative dialogue work? For those of you who may have joined with deliberative dialogue, joined us in deliberative dialogue before, I share this quote at every deliberative dialogue. And for the our person joining us on the phone, are you able to see the screen at all? Just want to touch base.
Hi, are you talking, am I the only one who's on the phone call?
I think you are, yes, and I don't want to bypass what this says if you can't see the screen. I'm happy to read it to you, or if you want to take a look at the slide deck a little later, it's up to you. I'm happy to read it to you now, though.
If you just reference the slide and I can look at it later, that's perfectly fine. I had some issues with Microsoft Teams and I didn't want to hold this up.
Okay, I appreciate that. So yeah, if you have an opportunity, take a look at this quote about what deliberative dialogue is and how it differs from other forms of public disclosure like debate, negotiation, et cetera. There's also a live link in the slide for folks to connect to the Resolution Collaborative. That's a website that I like to visit with some frequency, but it talks a great deal about deliberative dialogue and how they help us to think together. Just really briefly, just want to highlight how deliberative dialogue is different from debate. And again, for our caller, it's a slide you can look at in the future. But for those who can see the slide, it is very different from debate, because what we're really trying to do is find common ground, find ways that we can think about weighing alternatives, listening to each other to find meaning, and work together collaboratively on themes that may be of interest to all of us. We really respect that we might have differing opinions, but it's from those differing opinions that I think we come to some really nice resolutions moving forward. So that really, other than our other opportunities, are the kinds of things that the agency hosts specifically related to the rule development process, but there's lots of other opportunities available for you to participate with the agency. We do have a lot of future community engagement on the horizon, especially in licensing. I don't know if anyone from licensing would like to speak to that when we're done with this section, but we're excited about opportunities that we're going to offer there. You can also listen into board meetings. Those are always available to the public, as are other opportunities. And then if you have written comments you want to offer, happy to take those at any time. You're also more than welcome to contact, and I've given email addresses for a variety of us here. But we're happy to talk to you through email exchange, also through phone calls, if that's what's going to be most helpful for you. So lots of folks you can contact here, and they've introduced themselves to begin this session here today. And then there's also other resources. Gov delivery messages. I wasn't going to walk everyone through how to sign up for Gov delivery messages, but of course, if you just go to our outward facing website and click on get email notifications, pop up the screen right here, and I'm circling it with the cursor. That'll get you email, sign up for email updates, and choose all the things that you want to know about when the menu pops up after you click the submit button here. I will briefly touch here on our policy and rulemaking website. Lots of opportunities to learn about what's going on with current rulemaking activity, stuff we've recently adopted, as well as interpretive and policy statements. We also have a video here. I won't click on the link, but we have a YouTube video about our rulemaking process. There's a little, provide a little vignette on what we offer in terms of stakeholder engagement opportunities for folks. So that's another way you can learn about what we do. And then there's a fantastic licensing services website that lots of opportunities for you to click into learning about what licensing does. And then we also have a social equity web part that is full of lots of opportunity to learn about what LCB is doing to prepare for the social equity program. I'll bring that up for folks right now so you can see that, because it is just the coolest thing. And also kind of showcase what licensing has done in this regard. So just a really, really full and robust website that provides lots of information, things you can do right now, let you know what LCB is doing to prepare for the social equity program launch, things that social equity applicants might be interested in knowing, and links to the social equity task force. So I'm going to stop right there, kick it over to some of my colleagues here to provide any feedback or offerings on things that I might have forgotten to speak about. I certainly hope there hasn't been anything. I'm going to go stop screen sharing right now, if it's okay with everybody. There we go. Bring it back to the room and open it up for, again, kicking it back to some of my LCB colleagues to see if there's anything I've forgotten to reference here.
Hey, Kathy, I'll jump in. Just to try to address some of the common questions that we get at the, kind of the pre stages before rulemaking kind of kicks in. We get a lot of questions about laws and rules, and they feel the same after the fact. So I think there's a lot of confusion on who does what. Now, legislature creates the laws, we create the rules. And so one thing to keep in mind as we're doing rulemaking is we're limited on some of the subject matters that we can actually develop rules for based on the statutory language that the legislature creates. So sometimes people will come to us and petition us for rules, and we're not able to do those rules because of the restrictions and statutes. So one of the things we'd like to encourage folks to do as you're participating in the rulemaking process is reach out to us early, even before you want to file a petition for rulemaking, and we can walk you through, whether or not we have the legal authority to create a rule on the subject, what risks there might be. If it needs to be a legislative ask, then what would that look like, and kind of help scope what you were thinking of. And so we're definitely available for that even before the CR 101 or the stage 1 occurs. And so we can help you with any ideas that you have if you're trying to petition us for a rule. And then, of course, once the rulemaking begins, we have all those other opportunities to engage. But do want to encourage people to, come early, and we're certainly happy to sit down and help, whether it's one-on-one with a licensee saying, okay, this is what we're looking at from a particular aspect, or if it's a community group and you'd like us to come out and speak to a particular group about a topic. Let's say you have an idea about how to improve process or create a restriction for safety or whatever the case may be. You could certainly invite us out. We'd come and participate and just kind of have a conversation about what this would look like and whether or not we would actually be able to leverage the rule making process, and if we can, then explore what the options are moving forward. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of put that out there as an invite for community members to reach out to us early, and we'll be able to help you through those processes.
Thanks, Justin. And I want to just invite Paula, you join. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Becky.
So I also wanted just to make sure that folks, that stay tuned, take a look at a website, especially the social equity pieces. That's where you'll see updates on what we're doing, that we're getting, that Kathy mentioned, we're getting ready to do rules, but we're also getting ready to share information about what's next in the licensing process. You will see us out in communities this summer, meeting with folks, giving them information about how to apply for a license, what makes you a social equity applicant. So stay tuned. If you think of a place that makes sense for us to come and visit and share our licensing information and our rules process, certainly just shoot us an email. We like to hear from folks, but thank you.
Nicola, anything you'd like to offer?
No, I feel you covered it really well, Kathy.
Sure. All right. Well, you bet. Just want to circle back with colleagues, and then it looks like we had 2 people join us while we were in process. So anything else from colleagues, and then I want to move over to our joining participants and allow them to introduce themselves. All right, so Paula, would you like to introduce yourself? And then I'd like to call on, looks like Daryl joined as well. All right, so maybe Paula's stepped away for a moment. Daryl, wondering if you'd be interested in introducing yourself and want to reach out and ask if you have any questions. Hi, Daryl. I think you're muted.
My day is not full unless someone tells me my mic is muted. Hello, my name is Daryl Powell. On this phone call, I represent the NAACP State Area Conference, Alaska, Oregon, and Washington region. We have 13 branches that we oversee. 7 of them are in Washington State, in the 7 largest counties, the I-5 corridor, Pierce, Snohomish, Clark, King, and Yakima, Spokane, and somewhat Thurston. And so I'm just interested in the process here, in that I serve as Vice President of Economic Development for the state. And so we've been in the legislative process this past month, a little over a month, and I'm just interested in beginning to understand the process, not on the fly, but kind of learn beforehand. So thank you.
Oh, really glad you're here, and do reach out if, I shared when we were starting this that first of all, we're recording this. So if you need to come back and review it, you can. We'll also put the slide deck that we used here on our outward facing website. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to walk through the process with you.
Be careful what you ask for.
Okay.
All right.
I guess we're just those, it's what we do, right? So, you know, outreach and education, it's super important, and we're just really glad you joined us tonight. So
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Want to check with other folks who are on the line with us, and I'll just call April. Any questions that we can offer to help you with tonight or follow up for you?
I'm just trying to learn the process also, like he was speaking of. Just trying to get a feel for everything, learn a little bit more about my job and how to be my best. So you guys did a great job in explaining, and thank you. I have no questions.
Sure.
That was helpful.
Oh, good. And truly, if you do have any questions that come up, because I think even for some of us who, you know, kind of lived in this space, worked in this space for a long time, it's complicated. I don't think there's any other way to explain it than it's complicated. We try to follow it, but it's a complicated process for sure.
Well, knowledge is the key to it all. And thank you guys.
Well, thanks for learning with us tonight. I also wanted to, let's see, our phone caller, any questions that you wanted to offer up?
So y'all mentioned that it seems like one of y'all's biggest goals is trying to engage the community along with the lawmakers so that everybody is attuned. I'm getting at, I think so. Is that basically y'all's goal?
Yeah, I think community outreach is extremely important. Just to be clear, the legislature, lawmakers, typically don't engage in the rulemaking process to create the laws. That does not preclude them from listening into our listen and learn sessions or our deliberative dialogues or public hearings. Absolutely encourage that and welcome their participation. And I think it's fair to say we did have some lawmakers listening into our plant chemistry deliberative dialogues that we held over the summer. Those were highly attended, I think it's fair to say, but go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, the one thing I would offer about the interaction with the legislature, we often get asked when ideas come up, can you do this by rule? So, you know, that's one of the things that I was kind of talking about earlier that we like to explore early on. If we can do it by rule, a lot of times they'll defer the processes over to us unless it's, you know, pretty polarized or something like that, that it needs to be debated through the legislative process. But so they'll get involved, but a lot of times they do look for opportunities to shift that work into the agencies. And when you look at the legislative process, a very, very small portion of the bills pass every year. And so if you can do something through rulemaking, it's going to be most likely more successful in getting something established than trying to tackle it through the legislative process. But we don't always have the luxury of being able to create those rules depending on the subject.
Absolutely. So with that being in mind, I know y'all mentioned a few times that y'all strive to be as accessible as possible. What's the best, so are y'all going to send out like links to ways to email and communicate with you all?
Absolutely. And in the slide deck, there are a bunch of links that can connect you with licensing, that can connect you with our rules coordinators, that can connect you to multiple resources at LCB. So there are multiple ways that you can get in contact with us. Absolutely.
Great, because one of my biggest concerns usually with cannabis is making sure that it's at least accessible for people, because it can help people in so many ways, and it's really hard to dictate because it's still everything's emerging. So yeah. Now, do y'all have my company email available, or do you only have my phone number accessible through what y'all are able to see?
We can only see your phone number at this point.
How should I send you all my contact email so that I can get these links?
Let's see.
So I would suggest just sending an email to rules@lcb.wa.gov. Our whole team monitors that particular inbox. So, somebody will pick that up fairly timely and be able to get back to you with additional contact information.
Great. And let me repeat that to you to make sure I wrote that down. You said rules@lcb.laws.gov?
Oh, I'm sorry. lcb.wa.gov.
And I think Audrey just put the email address in the chat box. I don't know if you can see that, but hope so.
Oh, I'm just on the phone, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I just wanted to at least be able to see what all of this is about, for sure.
All right, well, thanks for that. And if it's okay, let's go ahead and call on Daryl. He's got his hand raised.
So you were just mentioning the rules process. So I just been on the end of a bill that died in Rules Committee in the legislature. And I do know that as it relates to cannabis, and I do know that there was some back and forth negotiations once it entered rules. Did the Liquor and Cannabis Board play any role once it went into rules, or at that point it's in the legislature's hands and all the amendments we were seeing were coming from their best skill set, but didn't refer to the Cannabis Board?
Yeah, so if I could jump in on that, so that's a point of confusion. I think that's easily connected with us. So we do administrative codes. So the Washington administrative codes are our rules. And then the legislature has a rules committee. So when things are passing through the legislature, they typically go from, after introduction, they go into a policy committee. And if they pass that, they'll go into an appropriations committee if there's any financial impacts. And then after that, they go to rules committee, which when people are talking about rules, and that's before it goes to the floor for a vote, those rules committees are predominantly legislative activity. Once in a while, they reach out to us and say, we're thinking about a change on this bill. How would that impact the, operations of the state? Would it impact the fiscal note? Those types of things. But typically, once it's in rules, we don't get as much involvement with that particular process in the legislature. So our rules are a little different than the rules committee legislatively.
Thank you.
I want to take a minute and jump over to Robin. Robin, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask tonight that we can help with?
Thank you for asking. No, at the moment I don't. But I think it's great that you've shared information and that your organization is available for questions when they arise. So thank you.
I just want to call on Paula one more time if you're there.
Hey, I am here. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I was coughing in the background.
No worries. So any questions we can answer for you, Paula, or?
No, I just think, Kathy, you and Justin do a phenomenal job. I've been working with the LCB for over 6 years. I'm so glad that you put on this informational session, because I think a lot of people that might be new to the process or they haven't worked with you, I think it was good for them to be able to hear this, because I think over the next year, there's going to be a lot of work for us to do to be able to make some of the rules we have to make. to be able for us to be able to come back and to achieve some real progress with social equity. So there has been a lot of work done with community outreach. There's been a lot of work done with the agency, and I'm just really proud on behalf of all the folks that I represent where the agency is and the work you guys have done today. Hey, Nicola. And so this has just been amazing. This is an amazing group of leaders throughout the agency. There's so many people here. And so I thank you guys for putting this on so everyone can understand the process. And I just think we've just got to keep doing this so that community can just continue to be engaged. I mean, Kathy, just everything you're doing in the educational realm has just been amazing. Justin's been amazing. Nicola, you know that I think you're a rock star. So just thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Paula. Appreciate that very much. All right, have I missed anybody? Are there any additional questions? Because if there aren't, we may be able to close off a little bit early tonight. A few minutes early anyway. Oh, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I actually do have a couple of questions. So is the LCB board or any of y'all keeping up to date with certain like scientific community conventions like the CanMed convention that's going to be going on in Pasadena, California?
I am not. Justin, anyone else?
Yeah, not so much on the convention front. We do keep an eye out for, varying laws and rules that are changing across the nation, different models that are getting stood up. There's an organization that's of regulators only, not industry, that we're associated with to bounce questions and ideas off of other state regulators to see what works well, what doesn't. So we're all learning from each other on best practices. But as far as those types of conventions go, that's not something that we've typically been involved with at the industry conventions. And if that's something that you think would be helpful, we certainly could look at something like that. But traditionally, that hasn't been one of the key areas of focus for us.
Absolutely. And I only mentioned that one specifically because when I wanted to start my career with cannabis, I'm more interested in the science aspects. And CanMed is supposed to be a convention where medical professionals, agricultural people, anybody from the industry, science, pesticide testing, everyone comes together and tries to bring the knowledge together so that we're in a more cohesive environment. It's not necessarily supposed to be just for California. That just happens to be the meeting spot. And that's why I was curious, because it's good to keep up with the science as in sense of thinking of things like Delta 8 or Delta 10. Like, it's good to understand what level, how safe it is, what are the concerns. And so that's why I was curious, because conventions like that are a good way for everybody to be as up to date as we can. You see what I'm saying?
Well, absolutely. We do a lot of, especially our team, we do a lot of research on the science aspects, especially when we're talking about the quality control rules and we're talking about, the new cannabinoids that are being identified and created into consumables. And so, yeah, it's definitely an ever evolving type of information flow, and that type of collaboration would be valuable, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to add as well, when we were holding our deliberative dialogue sessions over the summer, looking at cannabis plant chemistry, we reached out to our universities here, University of Washington and Washington State University. We have a cannabis research, I cannot remember what it's like a section at Washington State University, brought in a professor whose specialty really is growing hemp and understanding the cannabinoid side of hemp to that conversation. So I think when we're looking at the scientific pieces of this, we generally connected with the universities here in Washington and in other parts of the country as well. Kept up on that research. Yeah.
The other thing I'd add to that is, as Kathy explained earlier in the presentation, and we talked a little bit about deliberative dialogues, those are some opportunities also for us to bring in some experts. And last year we actually did some deliberative dialogues and listen and learn sessions that are really focused around learning what the science was. So we had panels of scientists that came in, provided some information for us. And we actually did that twice. So those are other opportunities. And if folks can think of those types of interest points and say, hey, we'd like to have a presentation on X, and we'd be happy to work with you to set up something like that, so everybody can well, dialogue together.
Yeah, and that sounds great. And I'm just curious. So when I mentioned my biggest interest in cannabis is the science aspect and making sure testing is up to date and everything. And that's actually a really big issue with the entire industry, at least here in the United States, is currently that there's not very many standardized testing currently for like the chemical side, biological side, more so that is evolving. But how much do y'all deal when it comes to the standardizing of, like, when it comes to the testing of cannabis, so that everybody's not giving incorrect test results? Because then that will, you know what I'm saying? It says it's 100 milligrams, but in reality, it wasn't that, because we don't have standardized testing.
You want to take a stab at that, Justin?
Sure. Yeah. So the way that the statutes are created in Washington and how we've developed rules around those are typically, we set some foundational pieces on, for, let's say, pesticides, and we work with Washington State Department of Agriculture around pesticide use, and we're the regulators on scene in our licensed businesses. And so, we'll write rules around pesticides. We'll write rules around quality control standards. We're kind of finishing up a rule package right now associated with that. And then the checks that we have out in the field, they'd be going and looking at books, records, COAs, those types of things to monitor that. But if labs are doing things dramatically different, we may not catch that right away. But we do have our labs are certified in Washington through RJ Lee, and so we have some standardization within the state that we've been adhering to for several years. But I know not every state is doing the standardization the same way, and so that's one of the things that we reach out to the other states, our regulating colleagues out there, to see, okay, what's new, what's going on, how did you establish this, and is it working, so that we can amend some of our rule sets and try to adapt to the best practices out there. So we recognize that it's not the same across the United States, and we're definitely open to exploring those ideas with folks if you have them.
And this is a very quick side note to that. When I was a quality control technician for a large chemical company, one way that they were able to make sure that labs were standardized across the entire world, this was a global company. They would make a standard and then send that out to the other labs and then have them tested over time, because they understand the source. So then they send it out to everybody. Would that be an applicable solution? Is that anything you all would be able to help guide in that direction, I guess?
I think we would probably have to have a more robust conversation for me to be able to answer that, because we can't necessarily, other than the standards that we place upon licensed businesses, we can't really compel the labs to do extra work or whatnot. So definitely would have to be a broad conversation looking towards collaboration and those types of approaches. So I can't really give you a straight answer on whether we could or couldn't. But again, I think it would be worth a conversation.
Yeah, because that's the best, because that we were given several ways to do that. And essentially the concept was to make sure that we weren't passing things incorrectly, because if you make the standard, well, it could be biased. And that was supposed to be the point, is to take out the bias so that it's not, we're assuming we're doing it correctly, and it's like a double check. And then.
Well, I was just going to also offer that we do have a bill that I believe is still alive this year, where Department of Ecology will be also involved in some of the standardization as well. So, which is really helpful, because we're not the science-based agency. We do have a chemist on staff, but predominantly, that hasn't been our history to be a science-based agency. So we're looking forward to those partnerships with Department of Ecology as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where we all can be better, like partnering with the scientific community to see which direction they think are the, like, for instance, CBG has gotten a lot of attention, you know, things like that.
So if I may, we've got a hand up that I'd like to, and we're going a little over time here, so thanks for the great question. I'd like to call on, it looks like Peter Manning, your hand is up, and welcoming your question right now.
Hey, you know, this is a bit off topic, right? But, you know, I got to point this out, man. Being at the recent thing with the social equity, the I guess the bill that they tried to get passed through the House or the Senate didn't work. Hey, listen, this is all fine and dandy, right? I'm totally with everything that we're doing here as far as how we're putting down laws and how we're putting down ideas and how to make things better. But you guys got to remember that there's one thing missing, and that is inclusion. You know, I just was looking how to get to this meeting, literally, and I clicked on to the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board website to, you know, navigate you through different things. I didn't even see diversity there on the pictures when it talked about cannabis. Keep in mind that you guys should all recognize and remember that I was a victim of smoking cannabis for my glaucoma. And as a result of that, I wound up spending 3 months in jail. This is in 92 or whatever. You guys, there was a overkill on Black people when it came down to cannabis in the 90s in this state. I was here. So you guys, you know, we had like a breath of fresh air for just a minute, and then all of a sudden it turns into this whole thing about the states getting involved. We're going to open up these cannabis stores, and we're going to do this and that and the other. And still, the people that were victimized the most were left out. And today we were having these meetings, and we're talking to all these people that don't sound like they're like my people about cannabis. And you guys, hey, you know, we got to have some balance here, man. We got to have you guys say, hey, you know what? There's got this bunch of people talking to us about cannabis. It has to be more diverse in order for it to have some meaning. To me, it's deaf. It falls on deaf ears because it's the same thing I was dealing with in 1990. Today, things have to change. You know, we have to do something different. You guys currently have right now 39 licenses that you guys can issue for Black folks. And we need to make that happen. And we don't need to wait till next year to make that happen. Keep that in mind. This is going to be the new push within the next couple of weeks. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And you guys have a beautiful meeting, the rest of your meeting. And I'll be here just watching. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And also invite you to become part of the rulemaking process. We're going to put the slide deck that we shared here tonight with all the ways that you can get involved in that process, because we're getting ready to issue some draft conceptual rules here probably in the next month to make that happen. So thanks for being here. And I think I saw April, I think I saw your hand up as well. Did you have something you wanted to offer?
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right, so with that, Peter, did you have any, it looks like your hand is still up, but I'm assuming that's probably from before, right? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to check in with you before we signed off. All right, it is 8:05. I want to thank everyone for sharing an hour of your evening with us tonight. We really appreciate it. And again, we will put these materials on our outward facing website with all the links. And then if you have other questions that you'd like to offer us, don't hesitate to reach out to us at rules, that's RULES, at lcb.wa.gov. And we'll be looking forward to working with you. So anything else for the good of the order before we sign off from LCB folks who are here tonight?
So I'll just throw out thank you all for coming and attending tonight. And I did notice a few folks came on later, so we will have the presentation online. And one of the offers that we did put out there in is if you have a community group that you would like us to come and engage with, we're happy to do that too, not just in this general sense, but we would be definitely willing to engage if you would like us to. And so we would just need some time to be able to set something up. So please reach out, and we're committed to working with everybody. So it's really like to see those types of engagements grow. So thank you. And I think Becky may want to jump in.
Yep, I just wanted to also, I just wanted to respond to Peter, and because what he said, I think folks need to hear loud and clear, is that we need to do a better job at making sure that our website and how we communicate with the communities of color makes sense, and we need to make sure that we're out there and reaching out in different ways. And so anything that Peter or other folks can do to help us do a better job, I ask you to, to provide us with that input. And so, Peter, thank you for that. I want you to know that we are committed to getting these 39 licenses issued, that we have been working on it. It hasn't been something that we've put on hold, waiting for a new social equity bill to pass. And so I look at our website. As I keep saying, check out the website, look what it has on there. We're going to speak to recommendations. We're going to speak to what the task force has done and what LCB will be doing in the future. So I thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, team. I'll talk to you all soon.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye.